Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of trekking through compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Episode 68, Elan of Troyius. In this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, we consider the episode Elan of Troyius, which aired on December 20, 1968, and occurred on stardate 4372.5. Story synopsis. The Enterprise is on a top-secret mission to the Tullan star system. It takes aboard Petri, ambassador from Troyius, then continues on to the inner planet Elas. Here it beams aboard 3 Elysian guards who check that all is secure. Then the haughty dolman of Elas is beamed aboard. Kirk is surprised by her bearing. She demands that Kirk and everyone else, whom she calls inferior, ask her permission to enter and leave her presence. Petri explains that Elan is to be taken to Troyius for a marriage with the ruler of Troyius in order to stop a bloody war. The Elysian Council of Nobles and Troyius Tribunal have agreed that Petri should teach Elan the customs of Troyius, which are the barest rudiments of civilized behavior, but Elan has other ideas. She also complains and hurls things about the room when she is unsatisfied with her quarters, which Lieutenant Uru has given up for her. At Peter's request, Kirk proceeds on the return trip on impulse engines, only so as to allow plenty of time for the Elan's education. Not surprisingly, the lessons do not go well, and Elan stabs Petrie in the back with a knife. To make matters worse, the Federation Commissioner sends a coded signal to the Enterprise that he plans to personally attend the wedding. Meanwhile, Spock detects a ghost ship paralleling the Enterprise's course. After fading in and out of sensor range, it finally ventures closer and reveals itself to be a Klingon warship. The reason for the presence of the Klingon warship turns out to be that the Elysian guard Crichton, who is in love with the Elan, has thrown in with the Klingons in a fierce jealousy hangover over having to give up Elan to the Troyan leader. Triton booby traps the warp engine, killing an engineer who discovers and tries to stop him. Kirk tries to take over the tutoring but doesn't get much further than Petrie did and has a knife thrown at him. Despite Elan's orders to the contrary, Kirk enters her chambers after Kirk stuns 2 guards and attempts to administer another lesson. At first, Elan tries to kill him, but then she locks herself in a closet and tells Kirk that she will wait there 10 light years if she has to, but then has a change of heart. She cries and tells Kirk that she wants to make people like her. Kirk unwisely touches her tears, which contain a biochemical substance that causes men to fall in love with her, and he is ensnared. Crichton transmits a signal to the Klingon ship and is then caught. Before Spock can use the Vulcan mind meld on him, he uses a concealed phaser to commit suicide. The Klingon ship then heads for the Enterprise at warp speed. Luckily, just before Kirk gives orders to warp in to maneuver, Scott discovers the Matter antimatter pods are rigged to explode as soon as the Enterprise goes to warp speed. The Klingon ship streaks by the Enterprise without firing, presumably waiting for it to go to light speed and blow itself up. Unfortunately, Scotty finds the dilithium crystals have been completely fused and the power for the warp drive and the phasers is therefore not available to the ship. The Klingons demand that the Enterprise prepare to be boarded or destroyed. When Kirk does not comply, the Klingons attack. Spock had been wondering why the Klingons were interested in Elan in the first place, but discovers the reason when Elan comes to the bridge and bridge sensors show that the common stones in her necklace are made up of dilithium crystals. Scotty is able to effect repairs to the engines using crystals, and Kirk blows up the Klingon using photon torpedoes on the next pass. Kirk is able to resist the effect of the tears and to McCoy's annoyance since he has actually managed to find an antidote. The dolman is safely transported to Troyius. Fun fact. I found this on a comment by J.A. Younger on the site missionlog.com, which is cited in the show notes. The taming of the shrew and Elan of Troy aspects of this episode are obvious, but I wonder if the overtones of Tristan and Isolde were actually as deliberate. There, in that story, they meet when Tristan goes to escort Isolde to marry his king, and they fall in love after accidentally drinking a love potion on the way. So what are the compliance takeaways from this episode? Well, the Elysian guard, Crichton, who defects and betrays his ruler, made me wonder about, do you perform continuous monitoring on your third parties? Why should you do so? Well, the simple fact is that every 2 or 3 years when you perform due diligence on them is only a snapshot in time, and you really need to move to continuous monitoring in case they engage in activity which would raise red flags or be problematic for you going forward. This brings up the next point, which is, how far down does your due diligence or investigation into your third parties go? Certainly you are going to perform due diligence for third parties on your sales side, but how about fourth, fifth, and sixth parties? How far down do you go? Do you require third parties to perform due diligence with those subcontractors for who they contract with to do business for you? Do you even allow that? Is this something you've thought about? Because remember, if a fourth, fifth, or sixth party pays a bribe on your behalf and they're in your third party chain, it all rolls up to you and you're equally liable. And then finally, this episode brings up lots of different things around culture. Certainly the Elan is a very spoiled young woman, but how culturally astute are you and culturally sensitive so that you would not engage in or behavior which would be antithetical to the society in which you are visiting? I hope you will join us tomorrow on Trekking Through Compliance when we take up the episode, Whom Gods Destroy.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.